Okay, we're just going to talk about the conclusion for our multivariate internal, and we'll just talk about the basics initially, and we'll do the Kiwi data. So I've taken somebody else's sample and basically what they've written, which is fine. So when we make a conclusion, we can make a conclusion based on the 3/4 1/2 rule, tentatively. And that basically states that, if we have 75% of one of the group's data bigger than, say, 50% of the other group's data, but in this case, it's 75%. So we basically have 75% of the female weights, and make sure you use context, are bigger than the 75% of the male's weights. There's no overlap in this situation. So we can obviously see that it appears as though female Kiwis are bigger and way more than the males. And so we've got even more than the 3/4 half rule here. And both medians are outside the boxes of the other. And so what does this suggest? This suggests that back in the population that female Kiwis weigh more than males. And then we would talk about sample variability and how because of sample variability, if we were to do another sample, we would probably find quite different things. You might find that one of the medians is in fact inside the box. We might get more overlap. So we would have differences in the medians. We would have different differences in the distance between the medians, between the boxes, where the positions of the boxes are in relation to each other, and so on. So we have a lot of differences in another sample, and that's why it's a little bit dodgy, if you will, or you have to be a little bit careful to make a call back in the population based on one sample. So what we do the 3/4 1/2 rule, and I think we're probably pretty comfortable with that. But also we can do more. We can talk about the overall visible spread and the difference in the median. So basically what we do is we do a calculation that enables us to look at the differences in the mean as a percentage of the overall visible spread. So basically we figure out what the differences in the means is, right? So you find your medians, not means, but medians, and you subtract them from each other and you get your dBm or your dm, which is the difference in the medians, which in this case for this particular sample is 0.591. And then you do the overall visible spread. So you basically go to the bottom of one of the boxes and to the top of the other. So you get an overall visible spread that ranges from there to there. And so you end up getting a number. You calculate the lower quartile and the upper quartile, and you subtract those, and you get an overall visible spread. In this case, it's 0.983. And then basically you do the calculation, which is to divide difference in the means by the overall visible spread and turn it into a percentage. And in this case, we get 60%, roughly speaking. So if we have a sample of 100, we're looking at a percentage of about 20%. So anything bigger than 20% suggests that we have a difference in the two groups and that one is definitely bigger than the other. And so the meaning here is since we have the difference in the medians as a percentage of the overall visible spread is 60%, then that's far greater than 20%. And so that we can confirm back in the population of New Zealand Kiwis, there's a difference between male and female weights, and that females tend to be heavier than males. So you want to make sure that you state that the females will be way more than the males. And so that's kind of how you deal with the conclusion. We've talked about sample variability. Now, the other thing that you might want to bring into your conversation at excellence level is things like sample size and the appropriateness of it. If there was anything unusual in the data, you might even discuss any other variabilities that not considered that might have affected our results in talking about our Kiwis. It could be, you could talk about age and age of the birds, and you might want to take a sample where you have a fairly consistent age, like adults as opposed to juveniles and so on, so that you can get a better comparison. Or there's a number of things that you can talk about. But you need to make sure that you answer your question. So if your question was, I wonder if there's a difference between the two groups, then you need to make sure that you explicitly answer that question. Either yes, there is a difference between those two groups, and this is what the difference is, or no, there is no difference, and this is why, and this is what it means.